Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, Fearless Females. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks to our sponsor, Fearless Financial Advisors. And today I'm interviewing Dana Hunter. And the thing that I found most interesting about Dana is that she kind of fell into a professional career. She had no intention of doing anything but working at home. And trust me, I know that's work, but she didn't want a professional career. And she ended up going to graduate school, and then she became an adjunct professor and then a professor at Brigham Young University. And I just find it so interesting, the path that her life took and the way that she was open to different opportunities, even though in her mind, she didn't need them. In her mind, she was going to do something different. She wasn't a teacher. She wasn't a professor. And yet, if you talk to her at the tail end, she's still got several years of teaching left, so she can still go ahead and inspire young men and women. But you talk to her at the end of her professional career, closer to the end than the beginning, and she is so proud of what she has given to these students, and she's so proud of her contribution. And it just strikes me that if she hadn't been open to these opportunities that came into her path, if she had followed her original thought and just said, no, that's not who I'm going to be, that's not what I'm going to do, she would have missed out on all of that fulfillment that she had. And so I really want you to listen to her story. Thank you so much. Let's get started with Dana Hunter. Good morning, Fearless Females. We are here today with Dana Hunter. She is an associate teaching professor in the School of Family Life, College of Family, Home, and Social Sciences at Brigham Young University. Am I right, Dana?
Yes, in Provo, Utah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your story with me and my listeners.
Well, thank you. I mean, my story might be quite different than others, so this will be interesting.
I love it. I do. I love all sorts of different journeys. And I think that we can learn something from every different path that a woman takes through her career. And just as a quick FYI, like I had talked to Dana a little bit about her journey and her story. And I think you guys are in for a treat. I'm really excited about letting you hear this. So my very first question is always, I'm a reader. I love anything, any and all suggestions. What's your favorite book?
Okay, I had to think about this one. Well, not too hard, though. A friend years ago recommended a book. I love it. And it is called The Kitchen Counter Cooking School.
Okay.
Now, I teach foods at the university level, and my background is family and consumer sciences education. And so my career has been in foods. And the premise of the Kitchen Counter Cooking School, it's by Kathleen Flynn. And she's a journalist who went to the Cordon Bleu in Paris. So this is real. This isn't fiction.
Uh-huh.
She's a journalist who went to culinary school in Paris, came back to the US and saw someone grocery shopping and noticed that this woman was buying just ultra processed foods and thought, does she know she can actually make that? And it's going to taste better and it's going to have fewer or no preservatives. So she pulls this woman aside and says, can I teach you a couple of things? And she helps her shop. And that gives her the idea to start what she called the Kitchen Counter Cooking School. She got 9 volunteers.
Uh-huh.
And she went into their home and she had them cook for her. And then they did a series of lessons with basic skills and how to chop an onion, how to taste as you go, how to make sauces, how to make salad dressing. And these women got to be good friends. And then she goes to their houses after a few lessons and sees their confidence has just skyrocketed.
Uh-huh.
And I love it because, first of all, it inspired me to want to teach everyone how to chop an onion. It's so easy, but people are afraid of a chef's knife.
Yeah.
And I also feel like education empowers you, and being able to take care of yourself is so empowering. And part of that is cooking.
Yeah.
So, in a long roundabout way, it's one of my favorites, the kitchen counter cooking school.
I love it. I actually had a couple of the younger women who work with me, and they're like, "We don't know how to cook," and
Mhm.
it struck me like I learned cooking from my mom, and
Yep.
my daughter actually is way better than I am at cooking, but she learned it from me,
Mhm.
and so I think some of those arts are kind of getting lost in
Yeah.
translation as you go down. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I just know how to cut an onion. I don't know where I
Right?
learned how to do that. So I love that idea. It might be really good gift suggestion for some younger folks
Yes.
who maybe think DoorDash is how you cook.
I know, right? The book does have some recipes in it, but it's just a fun story. And I see it every day at work, young adults who don't know how to cook
Yeah.
because everybody's so busy that cooking now is opening the container and heating it up.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like anytime you can gather around the table, I'm all about that. We saw during the pandemic when you went to the store and all you saw were ingredients, and you're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Well, some of us fortunate few knew what to do with ingredients. Or when the fast food restaurants were closed, and it's like, oh gosh, I can't drive through McDonald's. What am I going to eat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I
They're
think it's
valuable. Oh, go ahead.
no, yeah, I think it brings a lot of comfort probably and peace to know that you can fend for yourself or you can take care of yourself in that way. And it's healthier too. So I love that. Thank you for that suggestion. So, Dana, tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get where you're at today? What do you do? Just talk a little bit about how you got here and who you are.
Okay. Well, I think what's interesting, what probably makes me different from some of your other guests is I really see myself primarily as a mom, a sister, a daughter.
Mhm.
I don't see my primary identity as my profession. And I never really had this burning desire to have important profession. I just kind of stumbled into it and now looking 25 years later, super grateful for it. But I earned my bachelor's degree at Brigham Young University in home economics education, because that's what my field used to be called. And I always loved sewing, cooking, nutrition, interior design. Like that's what my field is: child development, family finance, housing. I love it all. And so that was a natural major for me. And I studied it and I loved it. After living abroad in a developing country, I actually got a phone call from the then department chair asking if I wanted to come to graduate school to get a master's degree with an emphasis in cross cultural studies. And when you think about it, I lived in Bolivia. When you think about developing nations, a lot of the struggles that they have are directly tied to my field of family and consumer sciences. It's housing, it's food, it's family structure. It's a parent has to be gone all day, or one parent has just abandoned because it's too hard.
Mhm.
So a lot of these things tie really closely into my field. So I came back and got a master's degree in family studies. And then I moved to Texas and had kids. And I always taught a little bit, like I taught SAT prep classes. I taught cooking classes at a private school. So I love teaching. So I always found ways to teach. And when I was moving back to Utah over 25 years ago, I reached out to my thesis chair and she said, "Oh, I really need you to teach this class. Like this beginning cooking class is just taking off. We have one teacher, but I could really use some help." So I was able to kind of step into that position. And then through a series of events, I didn't have that position because adjunct. So I was adjunct faculty, which means each semester
Mhm.
you get a contract or you don't, depending on the need. And there was a time when they didn't need me, but in that time, I had like a home based business. So I've always done a little bit of something. I did come back after a break. And then in 2020, after basically 20 years of adjunct and or independent study teaching, I found myself divorced, but also with an opportunity to pick up a visiting faculty position to be over the foods curriculum and the foods classes in the School of Family Life. And then in 2022, after 2 years as visiting faculty, it became a tenured position, so a more permanent position. And I applied for and was fortunate to receive that appointment in 2022. So I'm a teaching professor, which is different than a research professor. I don't have expectations for publishing and research, but I have a heavier teaching load. I teach 10 classes per academic year.
Wow, that's a lot.
I'm thankful though. I think it would be hard for me to manage my time if I had that research responsibility. So I like what I do.
Yeah.
I love it. I teach a beginning foods class. I teach an advanced foods class. And in that capacity, I update curriculum and make sure it meets the needs of our students, of the department. And also we are making sure our students have the competencies they need to be put up for state licensure. So the State Office of Education also impacts what we're teaching in our classes. We need to make sure they graduate with the knowledge base to teach foods.
Yeah.
And so in addition to my foods responsibilities, I supervise student teachers or interns, depending on the need. And an intern teaches for a year, a student teacher is just a semester. And I also help direct a study abroad to Europe. And then one of my citizenship assignments is to oversee and mentor the students in a student organization in the School of Family Life. So that in a nutshell is what I do every day.
Dana, it sounds like you have a huge career for not planning a career.
Right? Right? And for anybody who thinks professors have it cushy and don't work hard, trust me, this one does.
Yeah. Well, I never thought that, especially after COVID. That was an eye-opening experience for me.
All of a sudden, people appreciated teachers, and teachers got pay bumps.
Yeah.
I mean, our graduates are making an income that's comparable to the average income of anybody with a bachelor's degree out of college.
Good.
And with the teaching shortage, we have 100% job placement of our graduates.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they want a job, they will find a job. Not necessarily, most of them go into teaching, but there are jobs elsewhere. Like in a previous life, I worked in recipe testing and development in San Francisco. So there are a lot of different jobs that family consumer sciences can lead you into.
And I bet you get to taste some yummy food sometimes too. So that's good, right?
I do. It is fun. I'll be honest. After seeing like some of the recipes we're still doing after 25 years, and so they love it. They're excited about it. So sometimes I'm like, oh, just let them eat it all. Like they eat it. I've had it 15 times already in my life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But no, it's super fun. And it's very rewarding. Yeah.
Dana, what is the best investment you made in yourself? Is there something you can kind of look back on and say, oh my goodness, if I hadn't done that, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today?
Oh, for sure. My education. And especially my graduate degree. I do not have a PhD, which I think is a little bit unusual for a professor. But at the time that I entered the field, there were not a lot of people in my field looking for part-time work with a PhD, right? So, and my work was part-time for 20 years. So the biggest was I grew up in a home where education was emphasized. And so getting a bachelor's degree was a given. But when I got the call and they, offering me to come for a master's, I said, well, let me think about it. And my dad said, Dana, you'd be a fool to not take them up on that. And so I was just like, okay, I'll do that. Then for somebody who, my biggest plan was like to get the degree that I liked, that would allow me to teach if I needed to having an advanced degree that allows me way more opportunities. It was huge. I remember overhearing two young women in the grocery store one time, and they were talking about grad school. And one said to the other, oh, don't do grad school. You probably won't need it. And I just wanted to turn around and say, you never know. You might need it. So get all the education you can. I had female faculty as an undergrad who showed what it looked like to be a female in academia. One of them raised kids while a professor. So I had really good role models as early as my early 20s of females in academia.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's so interesting how those opportunities kind of presented themselves to you and you took advantage of them. And that you may not have known exactly right then why that wasn't your goal. That wasn't what you were planning on doing. But several years down the line, you're like, oh my goodness, I needed that. I needed that opportunity right at that time. And if you had looked back 15 years later and you hadn't taken advantage of it, where would you have been? You
Right.
know?
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, with my undergraduate degree, I still had the skill set to have a profession and support myself.
Mhm.
And education it's a great field, but having that master's degree just opened up higher ed, which I really enjoy.
What about some bad advice? Dana, did anyone ever give you some really bad advice and did you take it? Did you ignore it? What'd you learn?
I don't know if there's been bad advice per se, but there's this belief and this inner voice that came from somewhere that I'm still unpacking, that my worth is based on my successes at work and in relationships and in tasks that I'm given, whether it's in volunteer work or being a good neighbor, right? And I'm realizing there's so much out of my control at work, in relationships, that's an unfair expectation to say my worth is tied to my success there.
Mhm.
Like my worth has already been determined. I am of infinite value.
Mhm.
And like I said, there are so many intangibles. I rely on a food buyer at work to procure the food and help get it ready for lab. Well, if for some reason she has an emergency and the food isn't there for lab, that doesn't mean I'm unsuccessful. That means there was something out of my control that happened
Mhm.
and we'll pivot.
I think that's really impactful. I think that's really important to think that there's, especially for women who feel, I was just at a speaking engagement today where they say women feel simultaneously too much and not enough. And so that idea of having that checklist that like, if I get all these things done, if I do 100% at my career, if if I get everything done in this marriage or relationship or whatever, if I get my kids raised correctly and they have their 2.5 activities, like if I get this checklist done, then I'll know I'm worth something.
Right? But you might have a kid who doesn't want to do 2.5 activities.
Yeah.
And what's more important, your relationship with the child or those 2.5 activities?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important to kind of realize that we are not our checklist. Maybe that's a good way of looking at it. Like your worth is more than that. But how did you get there? How did you learn that?
Oh, like I said, I'm still unpacking it. And, I therapy is great. If somebody is open to the idea, and sometimes it takes a lot of, quote, shopping around to find somebody that's a good fit for you. But I think therapy can help. I think friends can help. Also realizing, would I put that same expectation on a friend as I'm putting on myself?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard though. It's super hard. And I'm certainly not there yet.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's hard for me to give people grace too. Like I very much come from a do your duty, be responsible, be dependable type of culture in my family, which I'm super grateful for. I would not be where I am if I didn't have the work ethic that I developed. But at the same time, now in my 50s, I'm trying to recognize that everybody's just doing their best.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's best is different every day, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard, though. It's super hard.
Dana, what about looking back along your journey and along your path? Is there something that you would go back and do differently? That if you had the knowledge, then that you had now, you would change the way you did that situation?
Career-wise, my biggest regret is not owning my career earlier. I used to always say, oh, I'm just adjunct. I'm just part-time. Or people, would ask what I do. I would say, oh, I work at BYU. And I wish earlier I had recognized my contribution to the School of Family Life and to my college. Because now that I am in a position where I rely on adjunct faculty to make our system work, I realize we would really be in a lot of hurt if we didn't have adjunct faculty. They do a great job. And we teach most of the students in our beginning cooking class are not majors. We offer multiple sections of the class because it's so popular on campus, and we want students to be able to learn to cook. So there's no way I could do it as one full-time person. So I wish I had owned earlier my contribution and that I was a valuable and a necessary part of the team, that I didn't diminish what I was doing. And I think there are probably a fair amount of women who find themselves in part-time positions who diminish their contribution because they don't have the office or they don't have the 8 to 5. And I would just say, no, own it. Own it.
Your worth.
Because you're doing it.
Yeah, you're putting forth the work. I think that's really important too, to look at that and say that there are seasons and times in our lives where we are pulling back from maybe this high-powered career. And I can't tell you how many women that I've interviewed and talked to that are almost apologetic about that. And I think that they've taken a different track, but they need to be proud of the reasons and what they're contributing to that track. Who's to say that if you choose to, like you said, if you're the adjunct professor, you are providing a needed service, something that's so valuable and necessary, and feel how much you are necessary for that. Maybe stop apologizing for it. I really like that, Dana.
Yeah. And don't diminish what we're doing. Don't diminish the work we're doing at home. A lot of the stuff that I'm passionate about gets really devalued. Doing laundry. I mean, I know how to remove stains, for heaven's sake. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But doing laundry, cooking, cleaning the house, a lot of those things get devalued. And we really need to own it. Whatever we're doing in our sphere, we have talents and skills that allow us to do it well. Whether it's I'm a piano teacher or, I volunteer at the school.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Yeah. Claim that value.
Yeah.
Because it's important. What you do is important, and it makes a difference in your life and in other people's lives. I still to this day remember my mom waking up every single morning to make us breakfast before we went to school. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes that we were out of that door. And she made sure that we had a good breakfast every single day. Now, I will admit that my kids were not nearly so spoiled as I am, and I did not do that. But I remember that sacrifice that she made that made a difference in my life.
Yeah.
Dana, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, your 20-year-old self, when you're just starting on this journey, what's one thing you'd say to her?
Me personally, to 20-year-old Dana, I would say to slow down, to process before reacting and making decisions. I tend to just dive in, which works well, but there's also time to slow down, and to say, let me think about that. Because I find myself overcommitting. Because I don't take a minute to say, let me see if that works. So slow down. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, because I do the same thing where I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. And then pretty soon I'm like, yeah, I can't do all this. And maybe if I did take a step back and slow down just a minute, maybe it would make a difference. maybe I should take that advice.
Oh my gosh, really, all it takes is, let me check my calendar and get back to you. And then to say, I would really like to help with that, but unfortunately, I can't right now. I'm not good at it.
I was just going to say that even the words are scary to me sometimes.
So I wish I had started that in my 20s, because by now I'd probably be pretty good at it.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I love that.
Yeah.
What about what scared you the most when you started on your career journey? Was there anything that scared you, and are you still scared, or did you learn how to deal with it?
So, well, what scared me was I had not planned on a career. Well, I had not planned on being an instructor at a university. So I get this job and I teach a lecture to 100 students using PowerPoint. So technology scared me. Like,
Yeah.
logging into the computer, making a PowerPoint. This was in 2000.
Uh-huh.
So, PowerPoint was new. I had graduated in 1988. So we did not have PowerPoint. I typed my thesis on a computer, but that was the extent of technology that I had before I got this job. I had done word processing, right?
Uh-huh.
So technology really scared me, still does, because it's always evolving, right? Like, teachers have so many great programs available to them to engage students. And I have a colleague who teaches a class on technology in the classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, just the idea, like, keeping current with technology is kind of daunting. And so I recognize it's not my strength. And PowerPoint is still working for me. Like, and when I can do slides, I can come up with engaging things for my class. I can pivot when I teach and see when I need to engage them more. But that probably is what scared me the most. Plus, I was 32 years old when I started. So I felt barely older than my students.
Uh-huh.
And I certainly wasn't as old as their parents. So that was intimidating, big time. But now college students don't scare me anymore. I'm older than their parents, so we're all good. And I can make slides. I can teach, and I have created a class for independent study, which really stretched me to see. And we created that in 2002. So to figure out how to create a cooking class that could work from home study.
Oh, yeah.
Then in 2018, we developed our beginning class as an online model and then blended. So I currently teach a blended model, which is like a flipped classroom. My students watch lecture videos that my colleague and I have filmed. They watch demonstration videos that we filmed. They read material, and then they come to class and we solely guide them through cooking recipes that tied to what they studied.
Yeah.
So I've been forced into this technology with blended learning. During the pandemic, I taught classes on Zoom. So no, I do okay.
I love that. Yeah, we kind of sometimes we just have to do what it takes, but I like that you're pretty authentic about the fact that technology is scary, because that remote control terrifies me. Like, right? I can do the PowerPoints and the coding and that sort of thing, but like making an electronic device work with a clicker is just beyond me for some reason. I don't know.
And it's so empowering though when you figure it out, right? Today I figured out why my clicker hadn't been advancing my PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
And it's because I hadn't downloaded the PowerPoint to the computer. I was just using the PowerPoint on the cloud.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. It came to me in the middle of the night. I went, wait, I need to download it. So, and I was really proud of myself that I figured it out.
Yeah.
Which somebody who's much younger is listening to this and going, oh my gosh.
I know. That's what I was just thinking. I am like, oh, they're going to be like, oh my goodness. But it's true. We need them. We need them to help us out with that tech piece, because I will drain the knowledge in my head into these younger women if they will just help me figure out how to use the tech pieces that we need. So,
and I can teach them how to chop an onion.
There we go. Symbiotic.
I can teach them how to make dinner, how to meal plan.
So Did you face any unique challenges through your career because you were a woman?
In my career per se, not necessarily, because education is a pretty female-dominated field. And then you get down to family and consumer sciences, and it's really pretty female-dominated.
Yeah.
Right now, the director of my program, Family and Consumer Sciences, is a female. The director of the School of Family Life is a female. My dean is a female. So I have a lot of female role models and leaders. And so, no, the trickiest part as far as like woman has been woman and working because of that invisible labor that women do. And that is often kind of expected, right? Especially when I had 3 kids and I was married and I was teaching part-time, even though it was a demanding career, I still had a home. So it was relying on carpools to get the kids to and from school. But I did it, right? Like I took my turn on carpool because I didn't teach Mondays. And most days ended early enough that I was able to make it home for soccer games and to take kids to dance lessons. But that was the trickiest part.
Yeah.
I so admire my colleagues who are on a tenured professor track and are raising kids. I would not have been able to do that. My position right now, just the way I work, it's very taxing and I put a lot into it. And I don't think I would have been able to manage very well a household with a full-time tenured position. So I'm super grateful that adjunct was in my life when it was, because it was hard enough to juggle a part-time university teaching position with kids. But thanks to friends, we did it. And, kids, and I had a spouse who was really good about being there. If I wasn't there, he and the kids would heat up the dinner and, do stuff like that. And so it worked. And it took all hands on deck, but we did it.
I find that a theme resonating so often, just like that idea of unpaid work. Like we don't, as women, a lot of times we don't think of it as unpaid work. We're like, well, that's just what we got to do, right? We take care of the kids. We make sure that they have good lives. But it is so hard. It's so hard to work and to take care of that extra piece, the house piece, and make it nice for the kids and stuff like that. And even if you don't have kids, like, doing all of those extras that as a woman you end up being dealt. I had one guest one time that she said, I'm just so proud of women's resilience. And I just want to echo that. Wow. Just think of all that you do. You are an amazing, shining example. Just being you.
Yeah, we all need to recognize that, right? Thank you. Yeah.
So I think it's important. What about, Dana, what is the thing you're most proud of?
So this is where, honestly, I was at an activity with women and they were doing like mingle, like conversation starters. And this question came up and I thought about, I would be lying if I didn't say the thing I'm most proud of is my relationship with my adult kids. I have 3 kids. They're awesome. And they're all doing their own things. My son is married. His wife is a rock star. So I consider basically I have 4 kids. My daughter is in a committed relationship. So I guess that makes 5. So, but I'm super proud of the relationship with my kids. I don't know what I did to get it. I really don't. But I will say somebody once said when my kids were like preteen and teenagers, they said, Dana, your kids are so great. And I said, no. I'm not taking credit because I don't want to take blame when they're stupid.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny. I say that exact same thing.
Yeah. I feel I don't know if proud is a good word, but I recognize that I'm very blessed to be able to be self-sufficient and independent. Like I mentioned, I was divorced, was coming up on 5 years. And because of the education and because I had already proven myself at BYU, all of that just kind of collided with, I feel, divine intervention to help me be in a position where I can support myself. And I feel like I make a difference. I really feel like I make a difference in the lives of my students.
Mm-hmm.
And that is huge. So my kids and my students.
I see that theme again over and over, but I think that is the way you phrased it is really insightful, just that you make a difference. Like that's what we all hope that we do is we make a difference in somebody's life. We make a difference in their future, in their kids' lives. And I wish that there was some sort of magical video player or something, Netflix DVD that I could watch that would show how my actions throughout my life did make a difference in other people's lives, because it happens. Just sometimes you don't see it, right?
Do you know, my daughter had an experience recently. My middle child lives in Indiana, and she graduated from my program, and she taught foods at a high school in Indiana. She's currently in flight school to become a pilot. So to your point of women are awesome and resilient, like I've got really awesome women as daughters and a daughter-in-law. She recently went to a restaurant, a really nice restaurant, with a friend to celebrate her friend's birthday. And she hears from the restaurant, Miss Adcock, Miss Adcock. And it's my daughter's last name. And it was one of her former students who was now in college. And she had seen that Allie was coming as a guest to that restaurant. And she had told all of her coworkers, this lady, she was my teacher. She was one of my favorite teachers. And they comped her stuff. And restaurant employees came up and said, oh, we love her. She's planning on going to law school after college, this student.
Oh.
And my Allie said, you know what, Mom? I realize even though I've left education, my influence is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there.
Yeah.
We don't know, but it's there.
Yeah.
And I just hope that all my students are like feeling empowered to then continue cooking. And back to what we talked about, like helping others cook, teaching people to cook.
Yeah.
Because it's just so empowering and so full of love and gathering and meaning.
Yeah. I love that. Any advice for someone who's just starting down this path so that she can be successful like you?
I would say be ready for anything. Take the opportunities. Also, perfection is impossible. It's not going to happen, especially at the beginning. Day one of your job, you will not be as good as the person who just retired from that job. I just visited with a student teacher this morning, and we were talking about expectations and learning. And I said, I had listened to a book that basically said, kind of what I took from it was, a mistake is a different way of learning.
Mm.
And she was like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that. So mistakes happen, and it's just a way that we learn.
Mm-hmm.
I have something written on my whiteboard that says, because I'm anxious, I'm very anxious, and I worry about things. And one thing I like to share with my students too is future you is not incompetent. And that is from Kendra Adachi, the Lazy Genius podcast. But, and I have it on my board written as future me is not incompetent. So that when I'm stressing out, I look at it and I say, oh, I will do it. Like, I will do it because I know future me is not incompetent.
Mm-hmm. Future me has got this.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. But take the opportunities, take the internships, even if they're short and unpaid, take them if you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take the opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
network.
Yeah. I think that's super important too.
And just take the path that you're led on. It's not going to be the path that you anticipate.
Sometimes things come in your direction and you have to be a little bit open to receive those.
And it always turns out good in the end. It does. It'll work out. It's hard in the middle. It's really hard.
And the middle, you get the beginning and the middle and the end a lot of times. So just because you're in one middle and you come out, yay, great, that's it. That's all I have to do. It's unfortunately not true, right?
I know. Yeah.
So I love, Dana, your passion just about setting people down around a table and learning to cook and feeding and nourishing and growing. I love that you are trying to pass that on to another several generations, of of women and men.
Yeah.
And I wish that you could inspire my young men who could barely cook an egg right now.
Well, there's a lot of resources out there. So
Yeah.
a lot of places to take cooking classes, a lot of great websites. It's tricky. Some people are interested, some are not. I remember going to AutoZone. My car had I had to jumpstart my car and drive to the auto place. And he said, "You need a new battery. Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he showed me what battery I needed. And then he said, "Do you want me to put it in the car for you?" I said, "Please." And so he opened the trunk, undid a couple things, put the battery in, clicked it back up, put the hood down, not the trunk, the hood, put the hood down, and I was off and going. And I went, he has a skill set that I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me be patient with my students. And it also helps me realize we don't all have the same skill sets.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today, Dana, and talking through your journey and just sharing your insights. I've really appreciated it.
Well, thank you. It's fun. It's fun. I love what I do, and it's fun to share my passion.
If I have a listener who's interested in connecting with you, how does she do that?
Probably the best way is through my email at BYU, and it's Dana, DANA _Hunter at BYU.edu.
Perfect. Well, I bet you'll get a lot of questions because, because I have some of my own and I've been cooking for a while. But thank you so much for sharing your passion and sharing your story. I really do appreciate it, Dana.
Thank you so much. And reach out if I can help.